Thank you.
Ian McKelvey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll take a brief call on the electronic monitoring of offenders legislation bill in the second reading, and I just wanted to agree with my colleague from the Greens very briefly on Mr. Workman. I think he's a very unusual Todd, isn't it? He is an interesting character, and he does make a great contribution to the justice system in New Zealand, whether we agree with him all the time or not. I think it's important that he is acknowledged because he does do a great deal of work for the system. I want to just speak briefly about the reasons that this piece of legislation comes to the House, and the reason that the Select Committee, pretty much with the exception of New Zealand First, unanimously considered it and sent it back here. It's just one little cog in many cogs that governments or successive governments have put in place to try and, I guess, improve our justice system. And this piece of legislation just gives us an opportunity to monitor and I guess assist people back into mainstream life from prison in a manner that gives them, I think, a much better chance of success as they reintegrate, and also gives us the opportunity where there's risk to monitor that risk and ensure that there's some controls, or that the justice system has some controls over those people's behaviour. I just wanted to talk about a couple of things that the Honourable Phil Goff talked about, because I think that there could well have been some misconceptions in the issues he raised. It's important to note that the thousands of breaches that he talked about are not about the removal of ankle bracelets. They're about any kind of breach that could occur. It could be a breach of the boundaries that those people are monitored within. It could be any number of things such as alcohol being consumed when they're on an alcohol prohibition order. So there's many ways those breaches could take place. There's certainly not all the removal of anklets. I also want to talk about the reason we have a large number of bracelets about and the number of detained on home detention. It's not a statement of new risk, because we didn't ever know before we had these electronic monitoring systems in place whether they breached their conditions of bail or their conditions of release or not. And so the monitoring system has enabled a whole lot of, I guess, the detection of a whole lot of breaches that we never understood how they were working before. And I also think that there might be 5,200, there's a potential 5,200 people that may come into the system. I think it's extremely unlikely that will be anywhere near that percentage of people come into the system once this legislation's passed. I think it's just worth commenting very briefly before I finish on the government's, I guess, contribution to giving people a better opportunity to integrate back into the mainstream as a result of their offending. And the last budget, there was some 20 million put into support of offenders as they leave prison. This bill and the addition of that kind of input will make a big difference to them. It's also worth pointing out there was some 356 million more given to corrections to assist to reduce reoffending, and that includes in-prison courses, education, smoking and drug and alcohol rehabilitation courses, and all sorts of measures that the Corrections Department are taking to reintegrate people into mainstream life. Whatever we think of our prisoners, we really need to give them every opportunity where possible to reintegrate into mainstream life and make a contribution to the New Zealand community. So I think this bill, whilst it plays a very small part and a very big, or is a very small cog in a very big wheel, I think it's well worth while. It'll do a great job, and I have no trouble commending it to the House.
Penny.